Good morning, everyone. Today I am with a new topic from IGCSE, that is chapter 19, and the name of the topic is Organism and their Environment. So let's begin with the topic, which is this topic is very important in terms of board examination. So we'll go through all the outcomes, learning outcomes, and we'll see the core and extended both. Let's go ahead with the topic. So as the name suggests, organism and the environment, we'll talk about organism and how organism is interacting with the physical environment, right? So let's go ahead with the topic. So whenever we talk about organism, right? So first thing comes in the mind, how the biological system is involved in transfer of energy. So we have to understand that the energy is must coming from somewhere, right? And then that energy is being transferred to the organism. And then ultimately, once organism get died, it will mix with the environment. Mix with the environment means this energy will get transformed, right? So we'll see in what way, how much energy is being transferred, who is the primary source for this energy, and how food chains helps in transferring the energy. So without wasting time, let's go ahead. So first of all, the sun. Sun is the principal source of energy in ecosystem, and energy flows through living organism like through food chain. So first energy is being taken by the plants. Plant will do photosynthesis, and with the help of photosynthesis, the solar energy, the sun's energy is being converted into a chemical energy in the form of glucose molecule. And eventually after this, the energies get transformed to the environment at first, right? So we need to convert the energy into a chemical form, because when we eat food, the food is broken down, the bonds are broken down, and they are converted into the simplest form. And simplest form of the food is being metabolized like glucose, amino acids, right? So in this way, the sun's energy, which is stored in the chemical bond, right, by the help of photosynthesis, energy is coming into the plant, and then from plant, it will go to the next organism. Now the question is energy is being lost somewhere, or it's just stored inside the body? So answer is no. Energy is not stored. Energy is a temporary molecule which keep on forming and getting dissolved. Right. So energy cannot be stored for a longer period of time. So let's talk about some of the process organism do to maintain the homeostasis by releasing some heat energy or energy in the environment. So let's talk one by one. So first, energy is lost through process of respiration. Of course, when we do respiration, the food is get metabolized. Food is broken down into carbohydrate, water, and energy. Right. So that energy is stored in the body, or sometimes it is released as a heat. Next, energy used for the movement. Of course, when organisms, they generally move for the search of food, right, to find a mate, or sometimes they try to escape from the predator, right? So in this way also energy is being lost. Warm-blooded animal like birds and mammals, they have to maintain their body temperature, right? So to maintain the body temperature, they generally lose their heat energy to the environment, right? So our body temperature doesn't change according to the surrounding. We are warm-blooded animals. There are some organisms which are cold-blooded, right? Like uh, amphibians, reptiles, right? Fish, they are warm, they are cold-blooded. Warm-blooded animals lose heat energy in feces and urine. So when the urine production is going on and when we pass feces, At that time also energy is being lost. Some of the material in the organism being eaten is not used by the consumer, right? For example, a locust does not eat the root of the maize, right? So what they're trying to say that some part is always undigestible, some part is always unused, right? You just take an example. Suppose you when you buy any green vegetable from the vegetable market, right? You bring it home. We don't eat the root part of some of the green leafy vegetable, right? So the meaning is some part is eaten, some part is not eaten because they are not able to digestible by the body, right? So we don't eat. Food chain and energy flow. So whenever we talk about the food chain, we always talk about the group of organisms and they are arranged in such a way. It's define the feeding order. Feeding like who is eating who, right? And in this way, the energy is being transferred. Like in this particular diagram, you can see sun's energy is present in a grass in the form of chemical energy in form of glucose. It's eaten by mouse and mouse is being eaten by owl, right? So in this way, energy is transferred. So when we have to write the food chain, we are not going to incorporate sun here, right? Because the sun is just a source, right? And who has produced that chemical energy? That is grass. So we'll start from grass, then grass is eaten by mouse, and then owl. So grass comes under produces, mouse comes under primary consumer, and of course, owl will be the secondary consumer because they are feeding primary consumer. And the arrow shows in which direction, right, the energy is being passed on. So a food chain shows the transfer of energy from one organism to the next. And we always start with the producers. We never incorporate sun in that. The source of all energy in a food chain is light energy from the sun. Of course, sun is very important source of energy, and without sun, nothing is possible because the ultimate source of energy is coming from here, right? So imagine life without sun, right? So the arrow of the food chain shows the transfer of energy from one trophic to another level. So this is called trophic level. So there are three trophic level here. First is primary. We also call them producers. Second are primary consumer, right? So primary consumers are always called herbivores because they are eating plant. And the third is carnivores, also called secondary consumers. So energy is transferred from one organism to another by ingestion. So they are eating it, right? So it's ingestion. So there are some key terminology in the topic we must understand. So what is producers? So organisms that produce their own food, right? Using sun's energy, right? Example, plants. Uh, plants produces for plant produces simpler food molecule because of the photosynthesis, right? Such as glucose molecule. Herbivores are the animals which eat plants, right? Like we are herbivores. We eat plant. We can eat animals also, right? So we can also be the carnivores, right? So we categorize them into a different called omnivores, right? Where organism eat plant and animal both. Second, carnivores, which eat only animals. What is primary consumers? Primary consumer are herbivores. They feed on plants. Secondary, they feed on primary consumers. Tertiary, they feed on secondary consumers. And what are decomposers? Decomposers are the microorganisms. What they do? They feed dead and decayed substances, right? And they secrete some kind of enzymes which helps in degradation of the biomolecules or the whole body. So these are some keywords, some key definitions we must know before going ahead in the topic. What is food web? So food web is just a network, right? It's a network of interconnected food chain. There are so many food chains. Like see this example. So in this example, there are so many food chains and all are interconnected, right? So this is formed because one organism can have more than one food source, right? So you can't say that like we have a menu, right? You can't always eat green leafy vegetable, right? You will eat something else. You will eat fruits, right? You will eat uh, uh, red meat, white meat, right? We eat milk, we drink milk, we eat cheese. So there's always a uh, option more than one. So in this food web, you can see it's a network and it shows feeding relationship again, but in a interconnected food chain web, right? So in this diagram, you can see that the food web is, first of all, it is interconnected, right? There are so many food chains, and food webs are more realistic way of showing interconnection between organisms within an ecosystem, right? And animals rarely exist on just one type of food source. There is always a multiple source, right? We can't rely just on one source, right? So food web gives us a lot more information about the transfer of energy, how energy is being transmitted, right, in an ecosystem. And it also shows interdependence, interdependence in terms of food, in terms of energy, right? For example, in the food web given here, you will find that in the population of earthworm decreases. Let's suppose, take an example. This population is going to decrease, right? So the population of the grass plants, right, will increase because there is no one to eat. Of course, rabbit and caterpillar are there, but they will eat how much, right? Earthworm is also not there, right? So their number will be slightly increased. As you can say that there are now few species feeding them, right? Next, what else can be happen if earthworm is not there? The production of frogs and mice would decrease because they are not getting food. But there are they are not getting food. Their life is not going normally, right? And the population of sparrow would decline slightly as they eat earthworm, but also a caterpillar. So they have a option, right? So this is how, if any one population is decreasing, how it is affecting the food chain, how it is affecting the food web overall, right? So most of the changes in the population of animal and plants is occurring just because of the human impact. We are doing something in jungle, we are doing something in the forest, we are cleaning something, we are cutting down the trees, right? We are degrading some of the food chain, which is indirectly or directly impacting other organisms, right? So either by over harvesting of the food species or by introduction of the foreign species to a habitat, right? Like genetically modified organism, which is not a wild variety, it's not a natural variety, it's a it's it's being engineered in the lab and then we are growing it, right? So but you will find that due to this interdependence, these can have long lasting knock-on effect to organism throughout the food chain on web, right? So it's quite complicated in terms of maintaining the life of the organism if the food chain is being disturbed. So food chain and food web, there are some terminologies. Let's talk about that we've already discussed, but let's go one by one again. So producers who produce food, right? Organic nutrients such as glucose. Primary consumer feed producers. Secondary consumer feed primary consumers. Tertiary will feed secondary and quaternary will feed tertiary organisms. Okay, so let's see the question. There's a question here. So you can pause this video here and work on this. I will share the mark scheme after 1 minute. Okay, so here are the answers. So if you have done this work, please go ahead and check. Pyramid of number in biomass. So let's talk about what is pyramid and what is pyramid of number and what is pyramid of biomass. So pyramid means something in a triangular way, right? So when we make a food chain, it's always in a triangular way, in a block diagram. You can see this is first block at the base, second one, and the third one, right? So how many? So when we say pyramid, pyramid of number, actually it represents how many organisms we are going to talk about in each level of the food chain, right? So here we have only three: grass, mouse, and owl, right? So these three organisms are making food chain, a very small food chain. And the width of the box indicates like the width. You can see this is quite heavy, right? I mean, there are more number. So the width of the box indicate the number of organism at that particular trophic level. So at the top, there is always one or two, not more than that. In a forest, there's just one or two lion or one or two tiger, right? Because they are the top carnivores. Their number will be less. For example, consider this food chain. Suppose it is likely that there will be more mouse in an area than the grass plant, right? So that means many mouse might one brand owl needed to eat per day if it is more than one, right? So there's always a top carnivores are always less in number, right? So pyramid of number for this food chain would be look like this. Despite the name and the example above, a pyramid of number does not always have to be the pyramid shape. It keep on changing. So let's see some example. Is it always like this or some other way? Pyramid of number example 1. So there is a chance that food chain will be like this. And the pyramid of number will look like this. So clove is a plant, right? It's a producer in the food chain. Its bar will goes at the bottom of the pyramid because they are the producer, they are the main organism, and the energy is lost in the surrounding as we go from one trophic to the next. So there are fewer organisms in each level of the food chain, and lots of clove is needed to support the snail population. Trash eat lots of snail, and the hawk eats lots of thrush, as you can see. So their number is keep on decreasing as you will go up in the higher trophic level. This is another type of pyramid of number where there's one tree. One tree is fed by so many insects, and so many insects is being eaten by very few number of insect feeders, right? So this is pyramid of number, you can imagine. Second example, just now I've discussed one tree eaten by insects and insects by eaten by insect eaters, right? Birds. Example 3, dumbbell shape of pyramid of number, where grasses are more, rabbits are less, and secondary consumers are more because they are feeding one organism. So then that is rabbit, right? So fleas are very small, and lots of them can able to feed the rabbit. So one rabbit is able to, it's like a big dinner party, right? Because uh, fleas are very small, right? So if they are having 1,000 of fleas, feeding one rabbit is enough for them to fill their tummy. Rules to remember when drawing a pyramid of numbers. So first, you cannot change the trophic level of the organism. They must stay in the same order as in the food chain, with producer at the bottom always, and then primary, and then secondary, and then tertiary. Generally, the larger an individual organism is, the less of them there are. So as will go up, the number will keep on decreasing. Okay, let's talk about pyramid of biomass. So a pyramid of biomass shows how much mass the creature at each level would have without including all the water. that is, we call them dry mass. So pyramid of biomass are always pyramid shaped, because it's keep on decreasing as you will go up, regardless of what the pyramid of number for the food chain look like. So we don't have to focus on that part. But pyramid of biomass is always pyramid shape. This is because the mass of organism has to decrease as you go up a food chain. If we take our first food chain as an example, it is impossible to have 10 kg of grass, right? Of course, not possible. Feeding 50 kg of wolves, feeding 100 kg of cows. So pyramid of biomass provide a much better idea of the quantity of the plant or animal content at each level of the food chain, and therefore there are a better way to represent interdependence without the food chain. That is also a big reason why pyramid of biomass is significant. And sometimes pyramid of number is not the best way to represent the food chain. In this case, a pyramid of biomass, the dry mass of the organism, is a better diagram to use. It shows the total mass of organism at each trophic level. So if you will weigh the mass of the grass, all the producers, of course, their mass will be more. Snail is going to feed plants, so their number will be slightly less. There are few birds to eat this insects, so their number will be again less. And sparrowhawk, which is the top carnivores, their number will be always less. Then we have a pyramid of energy. So in order for the energy to pass on, it must be first consumed by the organisms. So however, not all of the energy grass plant receives goes into the new cell when an organism eat. Some goes to the environment, some goes to the other. I mean, it goes to the physical environment, right? In terms of maintaining body temperature, in terms of mating, in terms of uh, movement. So, of course, energy is not going to confine to one organism. Only the energy that is made into new cells remains within the organism, and this is going to pass on, right? So when you're eating plant, the glucose is going inside the cell and they are oxidized and energy is produced. So that energy is going to remain inside the cell. Even then, some energy does not get consumed. For example, few organisms eat an entire organism, including root of plants or bone of the animal, but energy is still stored in the plant in these parts, and so it does not get passed on, right? So they are confined to one area. The majority of the energy of organism receives great loss through, let's see where, making waste products like urine, movement, maintaining body temperature, undigested weight. So we have discussed in the beginning that what are the source where the energy will be used up. This insufficient loss of energy at each trophic level explains why food chains are rarely more than 5 organisms long, because as you will go up, the energy content is keep on decreasing, right? So in an example above, in the previous slides, as we have seen, something they preyed regularly on the owl only gets 0.1 joule of the energy from each owl it ate. To see the energy, that 10% rule always pass on. 10% will go to the next trophic level. In order to survive, it would have to eat a huge number of them every day to get the nominal amount of energy it required to survive. Not expand much energy itself hunting them, right? Like there's a 10% rule. So producers will pass 10% of energy to the primary consumer, then secondary, and then tertiary. Now the question is, what about the 90%? So 90% is lost in the environment, and 10% will pass on to the next trophic level. Like here, if plant having 10,000 joule, then 10% of 10,000 is 1,000 joule. That will go to the next trophic level, right? Then 10% of 1,000 is 100, and again 10% of 100 is 10. So like this, the energy is being passed on to the next food chain. Let's talk about human, how energy transfer in human food chain. So humans belongs to omnivores, as I said, we eat plant and animal both. It's depend on choice what we want to eat. So these choices, however, have an impact on what we grow and how we use ecosystem. Think about the following food chain, right? So wheat eaten by cow, and cow is being eaten by human, right? And now imagine you are eating direct wheat, direct plant, right? So given that if you compare the energy transfer, right? So wheat from 10% will go to cow and then 10% go to human. And you are directly eating wheat. So you can imagine what energy cow is going to get from the plant, you will get, right? So it is clear that if human eats the wheat, there are much more energy available to them if they eat the cow that eats the wheat. The choice is yours. Be vegetarian, right? So there's a logic behind. So this is because energy is lost from the cow, so there is less available to pass on to the human. Therefore, it is more energy efficient with a crop food chain for human to be the herbivores rather than carnivores. In reality, we often feed animals on plants that we cannot eat or that are too widely distributed for us to collect, right? Then we have a carbon cycle. So to understand this carbon cycle, let's start with the carbon compound, right? Which is which is present in the microorganisms. They act as decomposers, right? So let's start with the feeding process. Let's start with the cow, right? So cow is feeding, so carbon is going in the cow. Cow is metabolizing the carbon, producing urea, uric acid, feces, right? So goes into the environment, right? And then they are decomposed by the organisms. Organisms are converting the carbon into CO2, goes to the environment by the respiration, by the process of fossilization, they are producing fossil fuels. And again, combustion of these fossil fuels will produce carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide is taken by the plant by the process of photosynthesis, right? And after death of the plant, it again goes and decomposes. So this process is keep on going. So carbon is being recycled. And we have seen the four main process which helps in carbon cycle. First is your photosynthesis, second is your respiration, third is the decomposition, right? And the fourth is combustion. So these are the four main process which helps to uh, help in flowing the carbon, right? So carbon enters the atmosphere as CO2 from the respiration, right? And combustion. CO2 is absorbed by the producers to make carbohydrate, right? In the process of photosynthesis. And number three, animal feed on the plant, pass on the carbon molecule to the next food chain. So most of the carbon they consume is exhaled as CO2 during respiration. So animal and plants eventually die. So the dead organisms are eaten by decomposers, and the carbon which is present in the body, again they are converted back into CO2 and goes to the environment. In some condition, decomposition is blocked. So plant and animal material may then be available as a fossil fuel, right? But it will take some time to make a fossil fuel, not immediately. So nutrients such as carbon and nitrogen are not endless resource. There is a finite amount of each element on the planet, and such as they need to be recycled in order to allow new organisms to be made and grow, in which carbon is one of them. So carbon is taken out of the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide by the plant to be used in the process of photosynthesis, and it is passed on to the animals by the process of feeding. Then it returns to the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide by plants, animals, and other microorganisms, right, by the process of respiration. If animal and plants die in condition where decomposing microorganisms are not there, if they are there, of course, they will get degenerate. If they are not there, then they are converted into fossil fuels. And when the fossil fuels are burnt, they get combusted, you will get CO2 back into the atmosphere. So increased use of fossil fuel again increases CO2 concentration in the atmosphere. So in addition, mass deforestation is reducing the amount of producers available to take the CO2. So CO2 keep on increasing in the atmosphere and temperature of the earth increases. So this problem is very uh, crucial. I mean, it's becoming a big problem nowadays. So deforestation is taking place regularly for land rather than uh, for the tree, right? So they are using for something else. So we must decrease the amount of CO2 production because it's creating global warming. In one way, you can check this. You can stop your video and do this question. We'll go to the next slide. The nitrogen cycle. Again, in this case, we'll talk about the proteins. Earlier, we were talking about carbohydrate, how they are being used up. So plant is taking nitrogen in the form of, in the form of amino acid, which is being formed by the process of photosynthesis. So plant is eaten by animals, cows, so by the process of feeding, protein is going into the plant. Proteins also contain carbon, right? Also contain nitrogen, hydrogen, and oxygen. So in this case, we are talking about nitrogen. So we'll specifically stick to nitrogen, right? And by the process of decompositions, the nitrogen content of animal and plant is converted into ammonia. And by nitrifying bacteria, it converted into nitrate and goes to the soil. And from soil goes to the plant, right? So this is one circulation. Other is generally naturally nitrogen in air is converted by the uh, nitrogen fixing bacteria, right? And they convert into nitrate and ammonia in soil. Some of the nitrogen is being nitrogen fixation bacteria and they convert uh, the nitrogen into protein because nitrogen is a component of the protein. And by the denitrifying bacteria, this nitrate and ammonia is further converted to nitrogen gas. So nitrogen is an element is required to make protein because they are very important elements. Neither plant nor animal can absorb it from the air. So nature has not given that option, right? So for nitrogen, we have to rely on plants. So nitrogen gas is very stable and the bonds holding the nitrogen atom together would need a massive amount of energy to break because there's a triple bond. Nitrogen is connected to three bond. However, there are two ways it can be taken out of the air and converted into something else, either by lightning fixing nitrogen gas or by nitrogen fixing bacteria. So there's only two ways by which we can use something, right? We can convert the nitrogen into some other form. Plants absorb nitrate they find in the soil and use the nitrogen in them to make proteins. Animals eat the plant and get the nitrogen they need in the form of protein, right? Waste like urea and feces, they have nitrogen content. So they are going back to the soil as an ammonium compound. And when the animal and plant die, they decay and all the protein inside the body is further broken down into ammonium compound, right, by the decomposers. So the plant cannot absorb ammonium carbonate compound, right? So what to do? So the second type of soil bacteria, that's nitrifying bacteria, they convert ammonium compound into nitrates and nitrite. And now this can be easily absorbed by the plant. Finally, there is a third unhelpful type of bacteria we call denitrifying bacteria, and they are found in poor aerated soil, that is soil without oxygen. So these bacteria take the nitrate out of the soil and convert them into nitrogen gas back, which is not good. Farmers can help reduce the amount of these unhelped bacteria by turning the soil by doing plowing so that they can make the soil more airy. right? So we'll check this. You can pause this video, do this question. Here are the solutions. Let's talk about population. So population is very higher level of organism, right? So group of organisms is it makes population, right? And in population, we categorize one species only. It's not like everything comes in one. And they must live in the same area at the same time. What is community? Is defined as all the population of different species in an ecosystem. So they all are staying in one ecosystem. An ecosystem is defined as a unit containing the community of the organism and their environment, and they're interacting, right? Population growth. So all living organisms compete with each other for three main things. First is food, second is water, and the third is the space. Those which are the best adapted to the environment generally increase their population, right? Because they are well suited. Population growth is the most organism is controlled by the following three factors: food supply, predation, and of course disease. Less disease, that means you are fully suited, fully adjusted in in the surrounding, and there's a maximum chance by the process of reproduction you will pass on your good character to the next generation. So your number is keep on increasing. If you see the population growth curve, there is always a four phase you will find in the growth curve. The first one starting from here to here, the green one, that's called lag phase. Then we have exponential phase. Then we have stationary phase, static phase. Actually, it's not changing, right? As time passes, of course, and then death phase. So lag phase, organism is trying to adapt to the environment before, because they can able to reproduce, right? So in addition, at this stage, there are very few organisms, and so reproduction is not producing the larger number. So, right, so because they are still searching for food. Then we have a log phase, also called exponential phase. So food supply is abundant here. Birth rate will be very fast, rapid, because going up. Death rate will be low because growth is exponential and only limited to the number of each individual that can produce. After this, again, a time will come. The raw material will be less, will be finished, will be used up. There is nothing, so there is a saturation phase, right? So stationary phase is the phase in which population levels out due to the factor in the environment, such as nutrients becoming limited, right? Birth rate and death rate are nearby equal, and they will remain so until the further nutrient is not going to replenished or become severely limited. At the end, when there is no food, of course, the death phase will come. Populations start decreasing as the time passes. Food supply is very short. Metabolic waste is being produced in a good number, right? So they cause disease and they build up toxics. Organisms in the natural ecosystems are unlikely to show population growth, right? Like a sigmoid growth curve, because they are affected by other factors like light, changing light temperature, predators, disease, immigration, right? Moving into the area, immigration, moving out of the area, right? So all these factors are responsible or play a major role or affect the growth curve. Thank you. With this slide, we'll end our session, and in the next lesson, we'll go to the next unit. Thank you.